Law 1. Never outshine the master. Judgment. Always make those above you feel comfortably superior. In your desire to please and impress them, do not go too far in displaying your talents, or you might accomplish the opposite, inspire fear and insecurity. Make your masters appear more brilliant than they are, and you will attain the heights of power. Transgression of the law. In the Grand Court of Louis XIV, Nicolas Fouquet served as the finance minister. A man known for his generosity, he adored grand parties, beautiful women, and poetry. He also had a love for money, as his lifestyle was lavish and extravagant. Fouquet was clever and essential to the young king. When the prime minister, Jules Mazarin, passed away in 1661, Fouquet expected to be named the successor. To his surprise, the king decided to abolish the position instead. This decision, along with other subtle hints, made Fouquet worry that he was losing the king's favor. To win back the king's approval, he decided to host the most magnificent party ever seen. Officially, the celebration was to mark the completion of Fouquet's chateau, Vaux-le-Vicomte, but it was truly meant to honor the king. The grand event gathered Europe's finest nobility and greatest minds, including La Fontaine, La Rochefoucauld, and Madame de Sévigné. Molière, the famed playwright, wrote a special play for the occasion and performed it himself at the end of the evening. The party began with a lavish 7-course dinner featuring exotic dishes from the Orient, which had never been tasted in France before, along with new creations made just for the night. Music played in honor of the king. After dinner, guests wandered through the chateau's beautifully designed gardens, which would later inspire the gardens of Versailles. Fouquet personally guided the young king through the meticulously arranged gardens. They reached the canals, where a spectacular fireworks display took place, followed by Molière's play. The celebration lasted well into the night, and everyone agreed it was the most amazing event they had ever attended. However, the next day, Fouquet was arrested by the king's head musketeer, D'Artagnan. 3 months later, he went on trial for stealing from the country's treasury. Ironically, most of the embezzlement he was accused of had been done with the king's permission and for the king's benefit. Nonetheless, Fouquet was found guilty and sent to the most isolated prison in France, high in the Pyrenees Mountains, where he spent the last 20 years of his life in solitary confinement. Interpretation. Louis XIV, the Sun King, was a proud and arrogant man who always wanted to be the center of attention. He could not stand being outdone in lavishness by anyone, especially not by his finance minister. To replace Fouquet, Louis chose Jean-Baptiste Colbert, a man known for his stinginess and for hosting the dullest parties in Paris. Colbert ensured that every bit of money taken from the treasury went straight into Louis's hands. With this money, Louis built a palace even more magnificent than Fouquet's, the splendid Palace of Versailles. He used the same architects, decorators, and garden designers. At Versailles, Louis held parties even more extravagant than the one that had cost Fouquet his freedom. Consider the situation. On the night of the grand party, as Fouquet presented one spectacle after another to Louis, each more magnificent than the last, he believed he was showing his loyalty and devotion to the king. He thought the party would restore him to the king's favor and showcase his good taste, connections, and popularity, proving him indispensable and an excellent candidate for prime minister. However, each new marvel and each smile from the guests directed at Fouquet made Louis feel overshadowed. It seemed to Louis that his friends and subjects were more charmed by Fouquet than by the king himself, and that Fouquet was flaunting his wealth and power. Instead of flattering Louis, Fouquet's elaborate party offended the king's vanity. Louis would never admit this to anyone. Instead, he found an excuse to rid himself of the man who had unintentionally made him feel insecure. Such is the fate of all who disturb the master's sense of self, poke holes in his vanity, or make him doubt his preeminence. Observance of the law. In the early 1600s, the Italian astronomer and mathematician Galileo found himself in a tricky situation. He relied on the generosity of powerful rulers to support his research. Like other scientists of his time, he often made gifts of his inventions and discoveries to win favor with these patrons. For example, he once gave a military compass he had invented to the Duke of Gonzaga and dedicated a book explaining its use to the Medicis. Both rulers were grateful, and their support helped Galileo find more students to teach. Despite his groundbreaking discoveries, his patrons usually rewarded him with gifts instead of money, leading to a life of constant uncertainty and dependence. Galileo thought there must be an easier way. In 1610, he came up with a new plan after discovering the moons of Jupiter. Instead of sharing this discovery with various patrons as he had done before, giving one the telescope he used, dedicating a book to another, he decided to focus solely on the Medicis. After establishing the Medici dynasty in 1540, Cosimo I had adopted Jupiter, the mightiest of the gods, as the Medici symbol. This symbol represented a power that extended beyond politics and banking, linking to ancient Rome and its gods. Galileo turned his discovery of Jupiter's moons into a grand event honoring the Medici's greatness. Soon after the discovery, he proclaimed that the bright stars, the moons of Jupiter, offered themselves in the heavens to his telescope at the same time as Cosimo II's enthronement. He noted that the 4 moons matched the number of Medicis. Cosimo II had 3 brothers, and that the moons orbited Jupiter just as these 4 suns revolved around Cosimo I, the founder of their dynasty. This was not mere coincidence, but a sign that the heavens themselves acknowledged the Medici family's rise. After dedicating the discovery to the Medicis, Galileo commissioned an emblem depicting Jupiter seated on a cloud with the 4 stars circling him and presented this to Cosimo II as a symbol of his celestial connection. In 1610, Cosimo II appointed Galileo as his official court philosopher and mathematician with a full salary. For Galileo, this was a triumph beyond measure. His days of pleading for patronage were over, and he had secured his place and livelihood. Interpretation. In one bold move, Galileo achieved more with his new approach than he had in years of pleading. The reason is simple. All powerful people want to seem more brilliant than everyone else. They do not care about science, truth, or the latest invention. They care about their own glory and reputation. By linking the Medici's name with cosmic forces, Galileo gave them far more glory than he ever could by making them patrons of a new scientific gadget or discovery. Scientists, like everyone else, are subject to the whims of court life and the need for patronage. They too must serve the masters who control the money. Their great intellects can make the masters feel insecure, as if their only role is to provide funds, a dull and undignified task. The patron of a great work wants to feel he is more than just the financier. He wants to feel creative, powerful, and more important than the work itself. Instead of causing insecurity, one must offer glory. Galileo did not threaten the Medici's intellectual authority with his discovery, nor did he make them feel inferior. By aligning them with the stars, he made them shine brightly among the courts of Italy. He did not outshine the master. He made the master outshine everyone else. Keys to power. Everyone has their own insecurities. When you step into the world and showcase your talents, it is only natural that you will stir up feelings of resentment, envy, and other forms of insecurity in others. This is to be expected. You cannot spend your life fretting over the petty feelings of others. However, with those who are above you in status, you must tread carefully. When it comes to power, outshining your master is perhaps the gravest mistake you can make. Do not deceive yourself into believing that life has changed much since the days of Louis XIV and the Medicis. Those who reach high positions in life are akin to kings and queens. They wish to feel secure in their roles and superior to those around them in intelligence, wit, and charm. It is a dangerous but common misconception to think that by flaunting your talents, you are winning the master's favor. He may pretend to appreciate you, but at the first chance, he will replace you with someone less intelligent, less attractive, and less threatening, just as Louis XIV replaced the dazzling Fouquet with the dull Colbert. And like Louis, he will not admit the real reason, but will find an excuse to remove you. There are 2 important rules to understand. First, you can unintentionally outshine a master simply by being yourself. Some masters are more insecure than others, monstrously insecure. Your natural charm and grace may outshine them without any effort on your part. Take the story of Astor Manfredi, Prince of Firenze, for instance. He was the most handsome and generous of all the young princes of Italy, captivating his subjects with his open spirit. Borgia laid siege to Firenze. When the city surrendered, the people feared the worst from the cruel Borgia. However, Borgia spared the town, occupied its fortress, and allowed Prince Manfredi, then 18, to remain with his court in complete freedom. Yet, a few weeks later, soldiers dragged Manfredi to a Roman prison, and a year later, his body was found in the river Tiber with a stone tied around his neck. Borgia justified this with trumped-up charges of treason, but the real issue was Borgia's notorious vanity and insecurity. The young prince's mere presence made Borgia feel less attractive and charismatic. The lesson is clear. If you cannot help being charming and superior, you must learn to avoid such vain and insecure individuals. If that is not possible, you must find a way to hide your good qualities in their presence. Listen well, for I have a tale to tell about the perils of overstepping one's bounds, especially when favored by the master. In the days of old, during the late 16th century in Japan, lived a man named San no Rikyu, esteemed for his mastery of the tea ceremony. He basked in the favor of Emperor Hideyoshi, dwelling in a grand palace and esteemed throughout the land. But alas, his fortune took a dark turn when the emperor turned against him, condemning him to death. The reason for this sudden fall from grace was a grave misstep on Rikyu's part. A wooden statue of himself, proudly wearing noble sandals, displayed in the palace temple. This act, deemed a presumption of nobility beyond his station, sealed his tragic fate. Remember this lesson well. Never grow complacent in the master's favor, for such folly can lead to ruin. Instead, employ subtle flattery to bolster his ego and maintain his goodwill. If your wit surpasses his, feign ignorance and defer to his wisdom. Should your ideas shine brighter, attribute them to him to ensure his esteem remains intact. And should you find yourself in his company, be a beacon of warmth and generosity, allowing him to shine as the center of attention. In all things, remember this. It is not weakness to hide your strengths if it serves your quest for power. By allowing others to shine, you retain control over your fate, ensuring your rise to prominence when the time is ripe. Just as Galileo's brilliance illuminated his master's glory, so too can your talents elevate those above you, securing your place in the highest echelons of society. Reversal. In this world, you can't go around worrying about pleasing everyone you meet, but you must choose wisely when to be ruthless. If your boss is on the decline, there's no harm in showing your brilliance. Don't hold back. After all, your boss didn't show any mercy on his own climb to the top. Assess his strength. If he's feeble, quietly speed up his downfall. Outdo him, charm him, outwit him when it counts. If he's very weak and teetering on the edge, let things take their natural course. It's risky to outshine a frail superior. It might seem cruel or spiteful, but if your boss is firmly in control and you know you're more capable, wait patiently. It's the way of the world that power fades and weakens over time. Someday, your boss will fall, and if you play your cards right, you'll outlast and eventually surpass him.